What's up, guys? Ronnie back, this time with a product review. FSElite has provided me with A2A Simulations' newest aircraft in their line of Accusim, the Beechcraft Bonanza V35B. A2A has given us a beautiful airplane with a gorgeous shine and reflection. You can definitely see it there in the spinner. Highly detailed, they even show us the wires connecting the landing light. Moving to the rear in that iconic V shape, we can even see that our rudder vader's trim tab has a connecting rod. Now, this dynamic shine and down to the rivet detail is shared amongst 4 liveries, and those liveries are November 228 Quebec, Delta Echo Hotel Victor Delta, TG Cat, or Tango Golf Kilo Alpha Tango if you're boring, and finally November 41 Golf. And when I was looking at the model here on 41 Golf, I did notice 2 slight blemishes on the V-tail there, those 2 red dots. I don't know if the painter dropped his paintbrush or what, but they're there. Even though 41 Golf has a slight texture defect, it's something about the red on this plane that just makes it extra appealing to me. It's still one of my favorite liveries to fly. A2A definitely gives us a lot to look at on the outside, but most of our flying is done from this seat. From the cockpit, it was clear from the moment I installed this, A2A had 2 simple intentions: immersion and realism. They immersed me into this cockpit with the unique sounds each switch, dial, and lever puts off. Have a listen. And realism, because these gauges are 3-dimensional, and they develop a life of their own and age with the airplane even when your system is off. The modeling on this airplane, texture blemish aside, is absolutely superb. A2A did a good job at hinting at this airplane's 1950s age with the slight staining we can see there under the rudder pedals and the bubbles in the window stickers here. Overall, great job. A2A also did a really good job with the manual they send with this airplane, giving us our normal procedures checklists as well as performance charts. They even give us a nice history brief on the airplane, as well as explain the Accusim systems and level of simulation within it. Really good read, and I would recommend everyone starting here with this. Luckily, A2A also gives us 8 in-sim menus to use while flying and to aid us in our journeys. However, I found myself only using about half of them. The maintenance hangars, where you can go to fit tip tanks, curtains, swap engines, and much more. You can use the controls menu as not only a shortcut to access various systems and static elements, but you can also age the airplane to give yourself a new, unique challenge, or to even reset it to a brand new Bonanza. One of my favorite menus is definitely the interactive pre-flight inspection, where you can take fuel samples, wiggle your flaps, possibly burn a couple fingers on the pitot tube, play with your stall horn switch, lock your luggage, and actually make a decision on whether or not this airplane is safe for flight, even within a simulator. That's the level of simulation A2A brings to the table. Startup in this Bonanza was really fun, and I found myself not using the quick start because doing a manual start like this, where you actually go through and prime the engine yourself, go through the checklist, which is in the pilot notes, as you can see there on the left side of the screen. They do give you an in-sim checklist to use, so you can fly this by the book. We'll be able to see, though, that the startup is really unique in that this airplane doesn't fire right up. It fires for a second, kind of dies off. I give it a little bit more throttle, and then she comes to life. A2A properly simulates aircraft systems such as fuel and electrical. They even model individual piston compression in the engine, as well as the oil system. Here we can see they've simulated the climate control system, and I'm actually having to defog my windows with the defroster. Taxiing this airplane I found rather easy as well as satisfying. It responded well to power input and reacted how you'd expect it to. Found it easy to maintain taxi speed and center line. Turning was surprisingly responsive and sharp. Actually, this airplane turns on a dime without any braking whatsoever. In fact, the only time I found myself using differential braking was at like small airports with really small runways where I was forced to back taxi. Takeoff, on the other hand, I found to be more challenging but also rewarding. Challenging because the torque and responsiveness of the controls made it easy to overcorrect at times, and at rotation I found myself dancing the nose a little, inputting the rudder required to correct for the torque. But once you get a takeoff right, it's a really rewarding part of any flight. Once I was in cruise and had power set, a lot of times in a lightly simulated aircraft, the cruise can get kind of boring. You don't have any real gauge movement and no instrument fluctuation besides maybe your fuel and heading. With A2A, that's a completely different story. You've always had a system to manage, such as fuel. You don't want to become too imbalanced. Or scan the gauges, because with A2A the gauges aren't perfectly still, and they do dance and fluctuate. And these gauges actually represent that system within the airplane that they're working off of. These gauges will hint at a bigger problem within the airplane that could potentially be day ruining if you don't regularly watch them. Before we maneuver this airplane and maybe stall it a couple times just to see how she reacts, I would like to touch on the performance hit. The performance hit on this airplane can vary. You can use this here config app that comes with the airplane to not only change things like GPS, but also turn on and off dynamic lighting. 4K here is for changing the in-sim menu UI sizes to be able to read it in higher resolutions. And finally, the most performance impacting of all, the tip tank mirrors. Unfortunately, I couldn't get any really cool shots of the tip tank mirrors. Here they are on a medium-high setting. Here they are on their highest setting. We can actually see a texture anomaly there in the reflection. They were so performance impacting, I actually couldn't even fly with this setting on. I had to turn down my scenery all the way just to get the shots of it on the ground. Luckily, though, we can disable this, so the performance hit could be anywhere from medium to high. When I was out practicing maneuvers in this iconic World War II fighter-inspired V-tail, I noticed a couple things right off the bat. One, in a bank, it takes a lot of back pressure to keep the nose up. And in banking of less than 30 degrees, it took little to no rudder input to keep the airplane in coordinated flight. That made things really nice for when I wanted to sightsee. In a stalling situation, I noticed one characteristic in particular in that this airplane tends to dip a wing in a stall. So in this demonstration, it was a power on stall, and I held it as long as I could. The airplane kind of recovered itself once the nose dropped here. That left wing kind of dips, and the airplane kind of recovered itself as I tried to keep it coordinated in that stall. The real question is, should we spin it? I mean, what could possibly happen if we push the limits of this aircraft? Huh. Well, it's far too late to second guess ourselves now. Here goes nothing. I held this spin out for a few rotations before I recovered, but on the recovery here, you can see that my head actually almost went outside of the airplane, which would lead me to believe that there are some serious forces at work when we spin this aircraft, so as the plaque said, I wouldn't recommend doing it. Adding this airplane to your virtual hangar can be done for anywhere from $49.99 to $99.99, that is US dollars, depending on your simulator or licensing requirements. In short, A2A Simulations did a fantastic job at bringing this V-tail icon to life in sim. With all of its systems true to the real-life counterpart intact, I found flying this airplane not only challenging overall, but very fun and rewarding when not exceeding any personal or aircraft limitations, of course. If you're the kind of simmer that wants an extremely high level of simulation and a challenge when it comes to managing your aircraft and its systems, then you probably won't be disappointed in getting this plane for your virtual hangar. When landing, the only thing I can say is that it had the tendency to float down the runway when I flared, but that just made landing that much more fun and challenging for me. I could see landing practice in my future in this aircraft. Trying to grease that landing is always a personal goal of mine. Once you've landed and shut your airplane down, don't forget to hand tow the aircraft to really nail your park job. If you guys enjoyed this content, please let me know what you liked about it in the comments section below. Maybe give me a thumbs up. As always, thank you for watching, and until next time.